when did you know you were going to be an athlete? And I honestly didn't know until I'd already
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. It's nice to see you.
Good, you too.
So how's your day been?
Very long.
That seems it for you. You just seem non-stop busy all the time.
Let me turn this fan off. I don't know if you can hear it actually.
It's no problem.
Yeah, okay. No, yeah, honestly, it's just, that's my life. It's always busy. I literally had 2 minutes to like do the washing up, and then I was like, I need to go get ready for this thing.
And then you do this thing, it's back to sleep, and then it's on the go again tomorrow.
Yeah, literally back to back to back. But,
and it's literally in the life of a sports person, you know, even the evenings and weekends, it's so tied up with sports all the time.
Yeah, usually I'm coaching actually today, and I'm not coaching tonight, which is why it's just the time. Because usually I'll coach like 5-ish till about 9. So I was like, well, I'm not coaching this evening, so I'll be able to fit it in today. So.
Which is great news. And obviously, you know, when you're coaching, you know, you feel so much for, you know, the people that you do coach, that you spend time with. You know, you've got that balance of going through sports and, you know, everything that you've endured yourself to, you know, being able to mentor and work with young people and to coach and, you know, be involved in that side. So it's great that they have someone like you who is able to be there for them with all that experience.
Who knows? Yeah, I know. I always tell them, I'm like, I know the struggle, but I'm like, unfortunately, that's what it is. I'm like, it is a struggle and it's not fun. And I expect it to be fun all the time. And I'm like, it's not all the time. You have to kind of like embrace the journey.
Exactly. And it's embracing that journey which has led for you to do many amazing things yourself personally. And, you know, even, you know, this year, 2022, a Winter Olympics, and you're still doing so many amazing things and enduring such a great journey. You know, even to go to a Winter Olympics itself is an experience in itself. How different is a summer and winter Olympics?
Yeah, it's mad. Like, oh, it's completely different. They're honestly poles apart in terms of in every way. In every way. I always give an example of like when I went to the summer games, there was 70 of us, I think, for athletics, competing for GB. And then when I went to the winter games, there's 70 like in all the sports total. So the community is way different. Like, it's a lot smaller community. The village is obviously way different. The environment's different. The setup. I mean, the values and stuff for the Olympic Games are the same in terms of like everyone's together. It's kind of like a real. It does feel like a community. It's like that at the games. Both games have that in common. And I think that's more of an Olympic vibe than it is actually maybe a UK thing. But they're just poles apart. They couldn't be further away, especially doing different events. The setup of the events and the way that you prepare for them as well is vastly different.
And in that sense, when it comes to preparing, what sort of strategies have you used in your preparation and in the build-up?
I guess, well, after learning on the go, like being adaptable is one strategy. You can't, that you can always have a plan, like you've got plan A, but essentially nothing ever goes to plan. It just doesn't exist. And if you're not adaptable or flexible, you're going to lose. Like, you're just going to fail all the time, and you're not going to, if you're not like doing that, you're not learning anything. And it's just learning how to adapt, learning how to grow, be better, be different. And you have to sometimes think outside the box. Like, in my career now, it's just so vast because it's been such a long time that I've been in sport. You pretty much get, you know everything into what is to know, or come across everything that there is to come across any issue. So you're kind of just knowledgeable in that sense, just because you've had to deal with it yourself. But it helps others, like you said. I can tell them, I'm like, look, this is what's going to happen. This is what you're going to prepare for. So I've kind of used that, just the experience I've had prior, and see how best I can use like my own skills to allow me to still be able to perform even when it doesn't go to plan, if that makes sense.
No, of course, makes total sense. You know, you've had such longevity in what you're doing, you know, starting at so young and still coming through and competing, you know, at age 36. You know, not many sports people, you know, especially footballers, for example, they would look at 34, 35, 36 as retirement ages and sort of drop off. But in your sense, at the age of 36, you're still competing, you're still pushing your body, and certainly your mind, and especially over such a long span, it must be so difficult at times to go, oh, do you know what? I would rather be better off not doing it, not competing, just away from it and just settling down. And, you know, because it's such a long period, you know, mentally and physically, there must be so much going on all the time. And to keep preparing and to keep going, you know, it's such a journey within itself.
Yeah, it is madness. I had someone say to me yesterday, "Are you still doing bobsled?" And I was like, "No." And then they were like, "What are you training for?" I was at the track training, and they're like, "What are you training for?" And I'm like, "For life." And then it's just like, why? Like, why are you doing it? And people, a lot of people don't get it, and they don't have to. It's not, it's not for them to get. It's the life that I've chosen and the one that I enjoy. And I never envisioned my life being like this ever. Like, honestly, I'm from very humble beginnings. So for me, it's kind of like I squeeze out every opportunity and every great thing in my life that I possibly can for as long as I can. And my body is not, fingers touch wood, like she's held up, like you know what I mean. Like, I've had PBs in the last 3-4 years of my career now, in the gym, on the track, even now. So I'm kind of showing not just other people, I think just myself, that all the stuff that we think is not necessarily always true. And sometimes it's not fortunate for everyone, but it's not necessarily true. And it's kind of like, well, if you can, why not? And that's kind of my philosophy. I'm like, they ask why you do it, and I always say, why not?
No, absolutely. And it's that why not, and that staying true to what you want to do, and that enjoyment. And as you say, it's that sometimes it's not enjoyable and going through that journey, and then it's just throwing yourself in and enjoying it for what it is. Not many people would choose what you've done in terms of sports, in terms of bobsleighing and athletic running. The preparation for running alone and just sometimes going through that journey can be so difficult, because it's not the most enjoyable of sports to do, in contrast to playing netball or football, for example, because you can find yourself alone running on a track. You could you're in your own head, you've got to keep pushing yourself, whereas sometimes you miss that team sport element. Now, you can train in a team, which is fantastic in terms of that, and have the people around you, but obviously when you're away and you're training yourself, running and getting through just that journey can be such, a tough task. Because, sometimes I take myself out, I could go out for a run now, and sometimes I'll come back going, do you know what, I wish I didn't do that. But sometimes just pushing through and trying to enjoy it. Some people think you're mad just for running.
Yeah, they do. But I was thinking that, and I'm like, look, I've stepped into a different space now, like in terms of job and work and stuff. And like, there's people which we call Joe blogs, normal human beings that they train more than sometimes athletes, man. There's some of these people that are getting up at like 5 a.m. to get something in before work. Now, to me, I'm like, that's madness. Like, that is actually dedication. But everyone's got their own purpose and their own journey of what they want to do. And being a lifestyle, let alone it being a sport, is when it's different. It's like, now it's become part of my lifestyle. Now, I've been honestly doing sport since I could literally walk. Like, I've got a picture of me as a toddler. I'm like, I'm not even 2 years old, at the park with a tennis racket in my hand. And like, I wasn't obviously playing, I was just probably running around chasing the tennis balls around when they were getting hit and out. But sport's been a part of my life literally for 4 years since I was born. So it's not, for me, it's not something that's like something that you just pick up and drop. It's just something that is a part of me and that I really enjoy. Some people like music, some people like dance, some people like theatre, some people like IT, but I like sport. So
it's becoming part of your lifestyle, and finding that you can't just pick up and drop it. And that's what so many people do end up doing. They end up picking something up and then realizing it's not for them. But to stay committed to it and to keep pushing yourself, and bobsleighing isn't something that you started off with originally and turning pro, and then to go into an additional pro sector is amazing in itself.
Yeah, it's mad. People would ask, what happened, you changed, or what did you change, or how was that transition? But do you know what I mean? It's honestly, everyone's decisions in their lives, what they want to do, it happens for various reasons. And honestly, when you're always asking, like, changing over to bobsleigh, oh my gosh, it's cold, it's a different sport, it's like, I'm older, blah, 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 all this stuff. There's so many things that pit against me not doing it. But I also saw opportunity. Well, I saw like learning something new, being a part of a team. Like you said, I've never been a really part of a team. I didn't play, I didn't do team sports at a high level. So when you're an individual athlete, it's a very different dynamic than when you're on a team and you're relying on your team members for things, and you're on the road together on tour. Now, I haven't had a UK winter for 5 years, and I'm actually really looking forward to it this year. It's like weird. I don't plan anything in the winter, but having that mindset of just, but I'm just going to try something new, and I just really enjoyed it. If I didn't, then I wouldn't do it. And it's not easy to do. Like you said, I am 36. That's not easy to do. Your body isn't the same as it was, and you have to be smart about things. But I've been at such a certain level in sport that it's not like me going in just as any person that can't do anything, trying something new. It's like you've already got these qualities and you realize actually, wow, you can do quite a lot if you put your mind to it.
You know, it's in that sense, you know, that you're 36, you're still incredible, you're still fit, you're still wanting to compete, your mindset, you know, is still energized. And it's fantastic that you are competing. And, you know, even though we say 36, that's nothing really, because you're still so young, you're still offering so much. And that's why you see boxers, for example, still wanting to fight at 36 and going on to their 40s. And, you know, Usain Bolt himself wanted to try football after running. Didn't quite work out for him, but you still want to find stuff because you're still so energetic. And, you know, not many people can carry that mindset past their 30s.
No, yeah, I think people retire themselves early, man, to be honest. I really do. I think when you're 25 as a sports person, you're offered that's kind of like the downhill part. Everyone starts, you get the murmurs, you can hear the talks, you kind of feel a bit differently. People have asked me that when they've got to 26, 27, oh, did you feel different? I'm like, yeah, of course you do feel different. But in the grand scheme of things, like, we've just been told a bunch of lies, to be honest. You know what I mean? Everyone thinks one thing. Now, this is not for everybody. Like Usain, for example, myself, Usain, and Shelly-Ann are the same age. So Usain just turned 36 in August, or actually, birthday might even be really, really close now, because I remember celebrating his 22nd birthday at the Beijing Olympic Games. And we were 22 then in our first Olympic Games. And it's like, we're 36 now. Shelly-Ann just is still running 10.6. She's had a baby and she's world-class time. Like, that shows to people that actually it's not entirely what you think it is. You think that, oh, they're passing, they're done. I'm sure you saying if his mindset wanted to stay on, he would have been able to stay on and still be doing a madness on the track. But he made that decision that, look, it's actually hurting my body. I'm tired. It's harder to come back from injuries. Any niggles, it's harder to get to that performance. And he made that decision for him. But there's no doubt in my mind that if he was still on the track, he would be hugely competitive. If not just like Shelley, still medaling for sure.
And, you know, in that sense, you know, even if he was on the street and you know, I said, do you fancy a race? He wouldn't be someone that I'd want to compete with.
Oh, you wouldn't be able to. You wouldn't be able to. I think it's like I'm sure Shelley's not doing any mums races at school because it's not going to be fair. I mean, I get asked all the time, like, so when you have kids, you can do parents' race. I'm like, I can't do that. That's ridiculous. That's like cheating. I can't possibly go on, because some of my friends that are sports people, they're like ready to go for this like mum and dad's race. They're like getting a warm up sneakily in the corner and going for a run. I'm like, I don't want to do that. I don't want everyone to be like, oh my gosh, the athlete. Like, I want it to be focused on them. But you could do it and you'd see the difference between someone who was a former athlete to someone who maybe just stays fit, because the levels and the performance, what you've done over such a period of time is completely different. Like, I'm competing with some of the people that are almost half my age in some of the sports that I'm doing, or they're just starting their journey, and still if you go like pound for pound and just meter for meter, I'm still there. So.
You know, of course, and, you know, seeing that contrast of when they were young and, you know, seeing yourself at this age now and knowing the journey that you've been through and what they're going to go through, you know, seeing that correlate in terms of what you've been through just brings a bit more realism to it. And, you know, from when you were young yourself, you know, you still are young now, but obviously over that time you might change your approach to things completely different to what you did back then to what you do now. Yeah,
you do. You absolutely have to be honest. You can't, and people struggle with that transition, I think, when they get older. As soon as they're like 25, 26, 27, they start feeling a bit differently. And especially 30, that's it. It's like, okay, I definitely can feel the difference. But it's like with anything, like, they always go, oh, you can just settle down and chill out. And I'm like, yeah, but you can always do that. And actually everyone does that. And it's one of the only guarantees in life that you're going to have to stop and that we're all going to die. And it's kind of like, well, I don't want to hurry the death. Like, I don't want to speed up my life. I just want to enjoy it for what it is right now. And if I can, why not? Because let's face it, like, anyone that was in that position would do it. It's just different for other people because they don't really see it like that. But you do have to be really, really sensible. You have to be really like wise in terms of like learning what it is that's going on in your body, in your mind as well, because sometimes it's not the body that will let you down. Like, the mind, the first thing straight away is like, I don't know if I can do this. It happened to me right before Olympics, at this Olympics. I think about maybe, was that even about a year in, and I had a really bad injury, and I just broke down because I was just like, physically I will get back, but mentally I don't know if I can put myself through that. Like, it takes a lot longer to recover from something that used to take me 2 weeks when I was young. Now it's taking me like 4. It's double the time, and that's time is money in this sport. Like you don't have time. You have to be ready on like February 20th, 2022 is the day of your race. If you're not ready, you're not there. If you're ill, if you've got COVID, if you've got injury, you just can't compete. So you have to be ready, and there's no excuses for that. So it's getting your head getting my head around. Was like, can I go through this again? And I made a decision that, you know what, I'm gonna do it and push through it. But it is not easy. And in the moment you think it is easy, that's what stops people. It's because they think it's going to be something and it's not. And I'm like, it's going to be long, it's going to be hard, and you're going to be, it's blood, sweat and tears, like real blood, sweat and tears. But if you do it, it's my question. And if it's something else, then do that.
You know, it's that lifestyle which is, you know, important, especially for an Olympian, you know, in a such way. Because when you think of professional footballers, they spend all day, every day, training, being paid to do that, doing football, and then, you know, having a nice lunch, going home, and then that's their week pretty much. They play their game, they have a couple of days off. But in terms of being an Olympian, it's so different, because obviously you're working full time, you're coaching, you've got so much going on. But you know, Olympics is every 4 years in a way, you know, and you know, there's different, obviously, winter, summer, and it can contrast in terms of what's coming up, you know, but training for it just in terms of competing at a professional and high athlete level, such as yourself, is so different from a footballer, for example. And it's about how you keep going all year round, even when there's, you know, maybe not an event coming up, or maybe you've got this, you know, lull where there's periods in between, and preparing for those 4-year intervals. You know, it's so different in terms of that preparation and everything, just for an Olympian in that sense.
Yeah, exactly. And I think a lot of people, like, you hit the nail on the head in terms of they don't realize that it is 4 years. I'm like, it's a cycle. It's not just like today, tomorrow, can I do it next week? It's like, nah. When you make that decision and that commitment, you're making it for a 4-year cycle, which means you're not going to get your goal, and you might not even achieve it at all. And you're not going to know that for 4 more years. So it's like, but then because you know that, and because you're driven that way, your mindset is different. The way you program stuff, the way you plan, everything's in cycles and seasons. So the way you plan from September onwards to September if you're in track, or if you plan from September to April if you're in bobsleigh, that's different. And you have your breaks when you need them, and you go back on it when you need to. And it's also processes of things. Like a football example, they're competing all the time, they're playing all the time, week in, week out and stuff. We're not doing that. It's a completely different sphere. But also the dynamics, like you mentioned, about being a professional sport. Like if I'm a footballer, I'm probably going to retire at 29 too, because I can, because I'm pretty much probably set for life if I planned it right. And this, I absolutely love playing football, which some people absolutely just love playing football. They're set because they earn their money. They're probably obviously well known anyway. They can go in sphere. They've got opportunity is the word. Like they've got time and now space to be able to do other things they want to do, whereas other athletes don't always have that kind of opportunity, just because if you haven't, like, for example, set yourself up in that way, or you haven't had time to do those other things, that's the time then you can do it. And you've had to balance things as well when you're doing it, like balancing work while you're training. They're not obviously doing that, but not all athletes. Some athletes, you know, a lot of athletes are professional, even in track and bobsleigh, they can just train and do that, and that's when you can kind of get like the real results. But you know, for the others, I guess like myself, you find a way to make it happen, because that's the only way that you are actually going to achieve what you want to.
No, of course, you know, a 4-year period isn't an easy, you know, sort of fix a time to sort of go, right, I got to commit the next 4 years. And you could perform so well for the first 2, and then your second 2 might be completely different. But it's such a big commitment, as you say, and you need to invest in that 4-year period.
Yeah, and it is an investment. Time, money, like headspace, physically, it is an investment. And you know, investments don't always pay off. Like we know that, like you could put in money in anything right now, stock, a share, a crypto, a property, and it might not bang. It might just like it might flop, and you might lose money. And that's like going into something, putting your heart in for a year and not getting anything out of it for that year. But you know, you can't risk small and then get big reward. You know, you have to big risk, big reward, because that's the way that dynamic works. So it's the same thing with your body and your mind. If you're going in there, you're going, right, I'm going to maybe struggle for money, or I'm going to have to balance working if I need to work. I'm going to find sponsors here and everywhere. But I'm also going to try my absolute hardest to give myself the best opportunity to do it, because the guarantee is that if you don't do those things, then you won't achieve what you want to achieve. And it is a complete balancing act that's over a big scope. But most people don't plan in those cycles. Like in their life, you're not thinking at 20, what am I going to do for the next 5 years? 20-year-olds aren't thinking like that. They think they're going to live forever. They honestly think they're like vampires. You don't think that you're going to like nothing's going to change in 5-10 years. Suddenly you're 30, you're like, oh my gosh, I have a meltdown because I'm 30 now. What am I going to do? What have I done? I haven't planned anything. Oh, I should be here, I should be there. But really and truly, it's because you haven't had to do that in whatever industry you're in. With sport, you have to do that because it's a very short window that you're going to have the opportunity. Or you can just change after 15 years like me and try a different sport.
You know, and it's amazing that you have tried another sport, because, you know, even going over to that sport, I was, you know, what I've seen it obviously on the television, and obviously as I've looked into more research, it's one of those which I think, no, you're all right. I'm quite happy for you to do it. But it's one of those where I think if I was in there, I'd be just screaming all the way in my head, get me out, get me out, get me out. Can't wait till the end. But, you know, just the thrill, it must, you know, to throw yourself in and just to jump over to bobsleigh itself, you know, it's such an interesting sort of, you know, sport to go, how did you get into that?
Yeah, some people do that though. They do get in the bobsleigh. They do scream all the way down, and they do get at the bottom, and they say, "I'm never getting in that thing again, ever again." It happens a lot. You don't see those ones because they're not competing, because they just can't. They're like, no way. Because you don't know actually until you try it if you're gonna like it or not. It's not something that's comparable to anything else. Like, I've been at racetrack, the Silverstone in a Ferrari. I've driven it like 170, whatever it is, miles an hour. Like, it's not compare. It wasn't comparable. Like F1, you couldn't compare going 200 miles an hour unless you've done it before. You wouldn't be able to compare anything else to that G-force and those pressures in your body and stuff like that. You just kind of imagine it and you see what they're doing. But what they're doing is insane until you do it and you're like, oh my gosh, I thought I literally was gonna die. That's the only way I can describe it. Some people think I'm actually going to die, and you can get hurt really badly, but you can have a great time as well. And I think once I'd done it the first time, I wasn't quite sure. I was like, oh, I'm not sure about that. That was like, it was rough. It's bumpy. There's a lot of pressure. Your body is not used to that. I had whiplash. It was just insane. But then I'm a bit of a speed freak. Like, I like fast stuff. I like fast cars. So that it kind of, it suits me, that the sport suits me, and it has to suit people. I mean, it's a military sport, so a lot of the people come from a military background, and you know how rigorous that kind of, the basic training is mad, and the training level they've got to go to, it's that kind of mindset. If you don't have that, you will struggle, because it's cold, it's freezing there. It's 5 a.m. start sometimes. You're down the track at 9 a.m. You're driving for 10 hours back to back. You're on tour. There's a lot that goes in to doing it. It's not just kind of like going there, weeing all the way down, like, woo, having fun, and then get out the bottom. But that's why it's not for the faint-hearted, and why as well as many people actually don't do it. But I always say, you know, try and experience it once, because it isn't like anything else. And I love it. I think it's great.
You know, it's great that you do love it, because it's obviously led to you doing so well in it, and, you know, competing in it, which is amazing, and turning pro. But, you know, it's not for the faint-hearted, and, you know, athletics in itself really isn't, because, you know, when you start off as a kid, you know, not many kids or young people sort of go, do you know what, I do athletics, or I want to get involved in that, and that's because there's opportunities which are far and few between. You know, I work in a full-time in a secondary, and athletics is only as a summer sport, so obviously kids are waiting so long for, you know, that cycle in its sense, for that to come around, and then they get a couple of months of, you know, summer sports, you know, athletics, etc. But obviously, you know, if it piques your interest, you need to find those opportunities away from school. You know, school has to pique that interest for you to go, I want to take part in that outside of school. So can it be difficult from a young age to sort of maintain and find, you know, your way into athletics?
Yeah, I think, well, athletics is a great sport, especially in the UK. Like, it's very accessible. There's tracks everywhere. Relatively, and there's clubs everywhere. We've got a really good club system, which no one really has. Not many people have a system like ours in the world, really. The Premier League, we have our own national league. So there are lots of opportunities for you to just get into track quite easily. I think it's one of the most accessible sports, because just going to local track, speak to someone, you can go there and you're there twice a week training, and suddenly you're an athlete. And it's difficult in other sports to do that. Gymnastics would be different, like a martial art would be different, but it's really accessible, similar to football. I imagine, going into clubs and stuff, and finding your way there into a local team. Bobsleigh, on the other hand, is completely different. Can't do it until you're 17. You can't even get inside a sled. So a lot of people obviously start a lot later. A lot of them transfer from other sports, which is good, because there's not like one bobsleigh athlete. There's really good bobsleigh athlete, but that athlete could be an ex-decathlete or an ex-shot putter. There's like, it's a range of people, an ex-rugby player. There's so many different types of people that come into the sport and that are good at it and can perform well, which is why it's good in that sense, because it covers a lot of the bases for the different sports people. But like you said, it's not for the faint-hearted, and you still need that kind of vigor. Like, it's like me going into rugby and not wanting to get hit. I mean, it's going to be a waste of time. Like, I literally had like two of the not from Saracens, two of the girls that had said to me, she's like, "Do you fancy coming to the rugby team?" And I was like, "Is that a proper invite?" They're like, "Yeah, coming down." And I'm like, "Mate, I don't really like getting hit, to be honest." Like, I'll get really aggressive, and it's not going to be for me. But if you're not suited to that kind of play, even if you love it, you're not going to do well at something like that. And it's the same with, for example, maybe you stay in playing football, or people that have tried NFL before. If you're not used to the game, the play, or used to having you being fast without a ball in your foot, is different to you being fast on your own on a track with spikes in one lane. Completely different ball game, literally. So that it's a similar thing to bobsleigh. You can be a really great starter in athletics and not really great in, you know, in 200 meters, but you'd be a great bobsleigher because you can be really, really powerful and strong. Or you can be really fast and then not as powerful enough and then not be great at bobsleigh. So it hugely covers the bases. But with athletics, when you're younger, it's so easy to get into it. And I'd always advise people to do as many events as they can, because when you specialize too early, it makes you so linear. Like, you just become literally just specialist at that one thing, and it's all the events complement themselves. And I've learned that as I've gotten older, how well they do complement themselves. The run, the jump, and the throw are all very, very similar movements. Some are more technical than others, but if you cover them from when you're younger and you get involved, and any age really, you can do yourself really good justice.
And in that sense, when you say it's good to not, you know, become specialist in one area and to stay open, you know, when you speak to, you know, others, professional athletes, such as, you know, in football, when they say, all right, I originally started as a striker, now I play professionally as a goalkeeper, it's the same in that sense. You know, as much as it's good to be a specialist, but it is a good thing, but having that open-mindedness and being able to adapt and adjust to, you know, other areas could really see you excel in those other areas, just like you have.
Yeah, definitely. As long as they're adaptable and can kind of think outside the box and think differently. And also the type of person getting into sports is really important. Someone that's focused or driven on their own, that likes to be able to train hard, or is motivated on their own, because it's not always going to be someone trying to make you do something. Like, if you're a footballer in a club that you have to perform, they're going to be on you, and they are on you all the time, because if you drop, there's someone else behind you coming, and they're a bit more kind of like drilled. Whereas if it's just you, there's only you only have you to be answered to, and you're not going to perform. If you're not doing what you need to do, that you're not going to perform.
No, of course. And, you know, obviously from a young age to stay motivated as well and to keep performing and to enjoy it from a young age. You know, when you are training and, you know, the opportunity for the Olympics came around, how did that sort of come into contrast and happen?
So for me, I just kind of just carried on just doing what I was doing, honestly. I just loved sport, and I didn't think about going to Olympics, because someone asked me, when did you know you were going to be an athlete? And I honestly didn't know until I'd already gone to the Olympic Games. Like, that year I'd gone to the Olympic Games and I finished, and I was like, oh gosh, I'm all right at this. And that was the deciding thing, because before that I was just enjoying it. I was just good at it, and I just loved doing it. I loved competing, I loved training, I loved getting better, I loved learning, and the whole atmosphere. So me starting out, I started actually high jumping when I first started out, because I'm giant. So I just was really good at jumping high. And then I had a really bad injury from jumping high, and I had to just stay in a straight line. The doctor was like, you need to just stop jumping. So I went into sprinting, and that kind of took me on my journey. So from them saying I couldn't jump anymore, within 2 years, I was national champion, or double national champion, for both sprints, at 16 years old. And then it kind of just skyrocketed from there, because I was in a really good environment. I had a good coach, got given to another really good coach. And then within 6 years, I'm at the Olympic Games, without trying to actually get there, just enjoying getting better, and honestly just doing the best that I can at the time. I never had any pressure on myself. I'm not really like, I don't really actually take myself anything too seriously, which I think is really, really helpful, because I am an overthinker, so I can be like, oh my gosh. But I wasn't like that with sport. I just kind of like, oh well, sit on with it. Whatever happens. And it allowed me to be really free in when I was training, rather than being pressurized. I can see a lot nowadays, younger people are way more pressurized than I ever was to compete, because they just want to perform well. They want to be the best now, And I'm like, it's not like that. Nothing comes instantly. You have to graft and just grind and go through it and learn about yourself so you can get better and better. And then you kind of see where you end up in the end.
No, of course. And when you speak about that freedom, obviously I'm a coach and I'm involved in sports, and a lot of people say, all right, you're quite chilled, you're laid back, you let things go. And I said, well, that depends. There's a time and a place for that. I try to come across as general as that as possible. But sometimes we're on the pitch and I'm quite intense and I want to deliver the best session and I've got an hour to go and I'm like, right, I need to do all this. And I'm in my head, I'm going a million miles an hour. But it's about being free and letting things go, because we can hold on to too much and we can overthink, as you say, and especially in sports. And you're going, all right, so-and-so is running faster than me, or they're getting picked, or the coach is spending more time with them, or so-and-so's been dropped from the camp. And there's a million different things you're processing. Being laid back and just going, do you know what, whatever, is so needed sometimes.
No, it definitely is. It allows people to be free. It allows you to just kind of express yourself, because there's no point in it. It's kind of finding out what you can control, right? So being worrying and being anxious about stuff, that is not helpful. It never is helpful. It's only going to ever hinder. So it's like, well, why worry about it? Then you're not going to be able to do anything about that. I had one of my athletes call me literally before this call, being like, am I at home? Can we chat about something? And I'm just like, why? For what purpose? Because they've spoken enough about it. You need to chill out, enjoy yourself, go and do something that makes you happy, and then you can get back on it when you think about what it is that you can control. Because worrying about stuff is not going to help anyone get better. You can be concerned and driven about what you want to be and be better, but if you're not, like you said, if you letting things go, being chilled and relaxed, it allows you to move forward as well. Because a lot of the time, if you're not chilled and relaxed and you just hold on to stuff all the time, you just hold yourself back because you can't move on from it. It's like you're being annoyed. I was watching the Commonwealth Games and one of the girls, unfortunately, where's she from? I can't remember where she's from. I don't want to say it wrong. I don't know if she's from Ghana. She's one of the weightlifters, and she completely she completely flopped her first lift, failed because she looked really tired coming in, and I was just like, oh, they were talking about the commentary. And then you could see her after she did the lift, she still had her clean and jerk, and you could see her still talking about it to herself, getting ready for her clean and jerk. I'm like, the snatch is already gone now. Don't worry, it's gone, it's finished. It doesn't matter now. Like, yeah, you've done whatever, but now the thing you can control is now performing at your best in this clean and jerk. And if you don't let that go, that's going to hold the one thing that you actually got control of right now. And you can see it in her face that it was holding her back and that she needed to just park it. But it's so easier said than done to be like, you have to literally care less. That's the best way that you can perform at your best, because a lot of the time, especially young people, I'm always like, just because you care too much, you just want it too much, and they just don't understand that. Well, I'm like, the moment you are not afraid to lose, is the moment that you will win. But until that point, I'm like, you're going to keep hitting your head against the wall with the performances that you're bringing to the table.
And in that sense, having that understanding and creating that cohesion between a group, especially, for example, if you're doing relay running, there could be 3 or 4 of you, and suddenly the person behind you isn't as quick as they needed to be, or you'd expect them. And then you could lose your head with them, be like, oh, you needed to be quicker, or you've been quicker and you pass it on, and then they've slowed down, the group, for example, and then suddenly the group goes from first to second. It can be so much pressure just in between that dynamic, just off in between, that relay, for example.
Yeah, definitely. And you have to, it's such a there's like finite mistakes. Like relay changeovers are less than a second, like less than 2 seconds. You have a 20-meter window, with anyone knows that wide it is, and it's literally, you want 2 seconds is the time that the baton travels in that. If you think about, like, it's like 1, 2, that means someone's gone 20 meters and given a baton over and changed over. It's so finite. But you obviously, everyone has roles and responsibilities. So it's like the incoming runners to control the change. So they're the person that's thinking about, okay, making the person slow down or giving them time to speed up. That's their job, because the other guy doesn't have doesn't have anything. All they've got to do is hear the word hand and throw it out. But it's also really tricky because you've got to stay calm in that scenario. And I actually remember the world champs in, I want to say Berlin, I can't remember, 2009. I think it was, and we were like in lane 9, which is one of the few tracks that has a lane 9 in our relay here, and I went off in second leg, as I do, because I was always running second leg, and I just like got into the checkbox. Usually you're waiting, you figure it's coming out, it's coming soon, no hand, keep running, no hand. I'm like, what on earth? Like, what's going on? So I just, with my experience, you get taught, you just throw it back, because it gets to a point where I'm like, we're halfway through the check. This is all happening within 2 seconds. I throw my arm back because I'm like, I can't hear her. And then suddenly the batten's in my hand and we go off. Then after that, we speak and like, what happened? She was like, you just couldn't hear me, because we were in lane 9 and the crowd were literally about 2 meters away from us. The stadium in Berlin is really, really close. It's one of the closest tracks. Like, you can literally touch someone. They could throw something at you and it would hit you if they were sitting down. Most tracks, you're really quite far away from the edge lane. Even at the edge, there's still like long jump and stuff. But this one was like, the crowd were right next to me. And they were so noisy. The stadium was so noisy. I couldn't hear it. So trusting, having that trust that you said within that moment, and being patient and knowing what to do, when to do it, is also like the letting it go, the being relaxed, the being calm in those scenarios, and knowing how to deal with it. But that also comes from being experienced and knowing when to do things at the right time, when things don't go right, because, you know, they don't always go to plan.
No, of course, and you know, it's that psychology. You can prepare and prepare and prepare, but sometimes, you know, you can be in that situation. No matter how much you prepared, it's not prepared you for that situation, because you've got the crowd closer than, you know, you've ever experienced before. You've got the noise going off in your ear. You've got someone behind you running. Then suddenly you might see one of the other runners on your left hand side blast past you, and then you're thinking, all right, do I need to change things up? And then your thought process might change entirely just off you know, a glance at the other runner. So there's so much going on, especially in that situation, and it can be so much the process at times.
Yeah, and it happens to the best of people. Like, honestly, you can be world class and still people get it dramatically wrong. And like that happened to us in Beijing, our Beijing final, when the Jamaicans were inside of us and they turned around, which is, it's not a 4x4. You don't turn around, you keep your head forward because your head's your steering wheel. And what happens is, if you turn around that way, your head suddenly thinks that the other way is straight, and you're still running at this point, and they're just running right into us. They're running in my lane. There's 4 of us in our lane. I'm getting barged, can't get the baton round, and that's literally like happens in a split second, and it's done. And then kind of like, you're like, well, that's that. Can't do anything about that. Nothing to do with you. But and in that moment, it's difficult to adjust and think, what can you do better? Now you could beat yourself up 10 times over about, at this time I'm going to do that, but at the time, you've got to make those decisions. And actually they're learning moments that you use them to kind of help you grow, move forward. You think, well, the next time, what can I do better, or how do I become a better athlete in that scenario? Because we can't plan for perfection. It doesn't exist. And if you do, if you only plan for perfection, then you're not going to really truly get any result that you want, because that's not always going to be the scenario that you're going to be presented with.
No, of course, and as you say, it's about having that freedom to express yourself and be free, and that creativity which you do need, and it's having that importance. Now, when you say free, one of my questions was that you actually broke a record, which was amazing, but I think that record was actually broken by someone else. So when it was broken by someone else, how did that make you feel? Did you let it go, or was it like, oh, do you know what, you've broken that record, come on now?
No, yeah, I was fine with it. I think I know everyone handles records being broken differently. I know that, and I honestly I wasn't bothered at all, mainly because I wasn't really, at the time, I wasn't even in the sport anymore. I think Dina broke it in 2016, and that was 2017, my first year bobsleigh, so I wasn't in the sport anymore. So especially when you're not competing against them directly, and you're not defending your title as you go along, it's not like you're competing still and then they're just running faster. But also that it kind of was a long time coming, to be honest. So that record was 27 years old when I broke it, and then suddenly it became, I'm the head of the snake, and it's like everyone's gunning for that time, because that is such a long-standing record, one of the longest UK ones, that then it becomes a target. And that's just the way life is. Records are there to be broken because it shows progression of the sport, progression of a nation, hopefully, and an event. And a community. And I think that I was kind of like, I just was like, well done. But I also we're part of the set, like, who broke it as well. I've watched her grow and compete and stuff, because her coach, I used to train, we were from the same club, so I was always at the same environment when she was really obviously really young. And her coach knows me from when I was young, and he was always come to me and be like, he said to me, we were really inspired as she was getting older when I broke the record, and he was just like, that inspired us to think that we could do it. So, and that's what you want. That's literally, and I didn't know that for years at all, until he said that to me. And I'm like, really? Like, wow. And he was just like, yeah, of course, because we got a lot of respect for each other, and because you kind of set that standard. So I was never like, oh, bitter and like, oh my gosh, whatever. I'm kind of like, how much further can people push me down the all-time list? Because now I'm third, so I'm like, and I'm probably going to be fourth or fifth in the next few years. But do you know what? To me, to say that I was a record holder in itself, like I was one of the fastest British women of all time at one point, and I'm still one of the fastest of all time, being in the top, still in the top 10. It's still something I'm super proud of, because it just something that I didn't even aspire to do. It wasn't like I was trying to get that record, for example. That was something that was honestly like given to me. I was honored to run that fast and experience that, and then go to the Olympic Games, all those things. So I think it's always different for everyone. Whereas I was really happy, and the only thing is, I wish I could continue being it to break it myself and go for it like everyone is doing right now. Everyone's trying to break it. I mean, she's trying to break it herself. That's a part of the game. You always want to be better than you were, and that's the only thing that I would want to. That you always want to be better than you were yourself.
No, of course, and it's so interesting, because there's so many points there just within itself, and it's great that you've cemented your own place in history, and that will never ever be taken away from you, and that shows true testament. Even if you decided, right, I don't want to do any sports from tomorrow, I'm just going to focus on coaching, you still got that place in history which will always belong to you, which is truly incredible. And it's also incredible to understand your psychology, where you're happy to see others beat you, and you want to see it, others push you down the list, as you do say. And it's incredible to see the sports grow and, have that contrast of athletes coming through. But, when you sort of see it, with the England team, for example, David Beckham was so close to catching up with Peter Shilton. I think he was on 118 and Shilton's on 125. Yeah. And I think Shilton, there was something going on behind the scenes that they reckon, because Shilton did not want his record beaten.
Yeah. I can imagine. You're like, no, I want to be the first, I want to be doing that. And I guess with them, it's because he's like, if you set a record that's faster, for example, like he's talking about caps. So if he set a record where it's like he's done something, someone can always do it again and better. Whereas if you are, for example, the first, or you held something, then it's different. Like, do you know what I mean? It's like being a medalist. They can't take that medal away from you, regardless if you're bronze, silver, or gold. But I like you said, I can always say I'm a former British record holder, because I was. And I can always say in bobsleigh, I made British history doing summer winter games. Like I'm always going to be the first person ever to do that. So it's like, even after that, if someone goes there, and I hope they do, that's the whole point of you doing that. For me, it is the whole point of us doing it, is to move on the sport and to inspire other people to push themselves. Because there's someone that's hopefully in their even 20s that are like, oh, do you know what? I think I could be the first then whatever to get a medal at the game. Do you know what I mean? And push that barrier, because you don't really push it until someone else does it. You don't. There has to be a first to do it. I'm just honoured enough to be the first, to kind of, like you said, written your name in history, as they said. And that was definitely my take home from definitely the Winter Games, but also just from my one of my greatest seasons, going to the Olympic Games of my career.
No, of course, and as you say, there's a great point to be made there. As I was thinking as you was listening, it's how people can perceive you and put you across, for example, because instead of walking in the room going, "All right, here we have a former record holder," walking in and introducing us, going, "We have current record holder," can be two different things. And for Shilton to be such of an older age and still be the most capped, and walking into a room going, "I am the most capped player ever," and then if he was to be sidelined in a couple of years and then he was introduced as one of the most cap, of course that must be such a difficult thing to sort of lose, but it can be taken away from you and you're like, oh right, I lose that markability in that sense. Yeah,
it definitely does. I definitely get that when you are like the form. I mean, I don't, because I'm always like, because I held a record, it's like, for example, if I was now just third and I was never ever hadn't been first, if I'm going around saying I'm the third fastest, which I clarify so that people, because they ask, has someone broken it now, or where are you now? Like, especially with kids, then I would say I'm the third fastest. But if I'm the third fastest and I've never been the first, then yeah, it's kind of like, oh, I'm the third fastest, and it's a bit like, okay. But when I'm always like, I was a former record holder. It's the same with Beckham and the caps. Like, I know that you want to be the only person to be able to do that, and you want to be able to be for as long as possible as well, to kind of hold on to that, to say that. But it's because a lot of the time you hold your value in those things, like your value is set in those achievements and what you've been able to do, whether it you've done it and it's gone, or whether you achieved it and someone else broke it. You want to just hold on to that kind of that the value in yourself. But in the grand scheme of things, you know what I mean, the older you get, you realize someone has to just come along and do better than you. Like it's probably going to happen, and you can't imagine. Just the fact that you are like he is, he's the only cap. He just needs to, I think, embrace that and relish the fact that you've been able to achieve that. I bet he was just waiting for him to retire, so he couldn't beat him. That was what he was waiting for. He's like, please don't beat me.
No, of course, and you know, especially for example, if you went into an athletics club and then suddenly had 100 runners there, how many of them would say, "Oh, do you know what? I actually hold a world record," for example, and that's incredible testament to yourself and that hard work, because you could literally stand on the side and they could all be training for an hour, but none of them are, you know, realistically beating that record in a sense at times, no matter how hard they train, because it's not natural in them, and no matter how much hard work, you know, you're not going to always beat the fastest, because you know you can still be fast, but there's always going to be someone faster than you, for example.
Exactly, there is, and that's what it is. There's always going to be. I tell kids all the time when I'm coaching, I'm like, you just think you're the shit now. Look, someone's going to be better than you. Because I remember being at school, being the fastest in school, and then going to counties and being the fastest in counties, and then going to nationals and being the fastest in nationals. And then you have your international meet, and you're against literally USA, Russia, Italy, France, Bulgaria. Then you've got 7 other girls that are just like you, same age as you, that are just as fast, even faster than you. Like it brings everything to perspective, that you're not always going to be the best. Like you have to get over yourself in that sense, that it's going to be, you can be the best you can be, which is why I say you have to be really proud of your achievements, because that is something insane that I never thought I'd be able to achieve. Like in my first open, I ran 11.7 to win nationals at 16. And really, if we think about it in grand scheme of things, 0.7 of a second is like that one. It's less than that. That's how much I proved, but it made me one of the fastest women of all time. So it's like, why am I going to beat myself up about it? It's that I'm not the fastest anymore, when it's kind of like we're talking about margins of errors. There's very few people that would ever be able to do that. And when you dismiss, sometimes people are like, they're Olympians, they dismiss it. You think about how many people would love to be in your shoes, because they would love to say that they are that, which is why you have to be, I'm like really, really on being proud about just in the moment and celebrate your achievements, because it's so easy to be like, I want to be better. I wish that was faster. I wish that was there. I want to do that. But so, like you said, someone's always going to be there that's going to beat you. You're not going to be the end of time to do that. I mean, Usain Bolt, he's world record holder, and that might stay for a very long time, and he is one of the, arguably fastest of all time, and for a long time. But people are going to come for him, and that will probably get broken, and then we'll be looking at it going, "Oh wow, do you remember what we thought? It was just never gonna happen." And he might be a bit bitter about it, but he'll get over it because of all the achievements that he's already had. And when you dismiss it, someone else will look at you and go, "Gosh, but I would be like," because they'll be like, "Oh, you're double Olympian." And I'm like, okay, I'll say this. And then they'll be like, I would love to just do 1, let alone 2. But everyone's kind of parameter of what they judge themselves is so different.
No, of course, and you know, being proud of your achievements is, you know, an amazing thing to certainly, you know, uphold and uplift and certainly carry around, because, you know, you go through so much, you know, in your personal life, you know, balancing that personal, everything that you do between coaching, between working, you know, getting up early, going, you know, the 5 a.m. training, being in that military training exercises within that environment with those personalities can be such a challenge in itself, as well as an enjoyment. But sometimes you might have, you know, 3 training sessions in a week, and you're like, all right, for the 3rd one, oh, I've got to go through this one. Whereas it might be different because you enjoyed the first 2. So to be proud of them, and you know, just going to the Olympics itself, you know, that's a huge achievement within itself. But then suddenly when you start to win other achievements and gain those records, and you know, make those marks, you've got an endless list of things that we could just sit here off and reel off, which you should be so proud of, and such a testament to, you know, your personality and how hard you work. So, you know, it's been amazing that you have these insights, and you know, many people should look up to you, even when you know you're at the school races, and you know, be seen in that spotlight.
Oh, thank you. No, I appreciate that. Like, I just think when you mentioning about being really taking ownership and like proud of what you've achieved in that moment in time and what I've done. And it is that moment. And for me, it's not also just what I've done. It's what then like my family have seen me done, because they, you know, they didn't, I guess, know that that was going to happen or imagine that, and that they've been on the journey with me, and they've had to been able to celebrate with me, whether it's training, coaching, going in different various aspects of my career. They've been about being able to, and it's also inspiring, like for them, hopefully, to be like, oh wow, you know, that's what you've done. At the end of the day, I see all kinds of different athletes, like you said, now at the track. You'll see them competing, and their one dream might be just to be. I've got athletes that just want to go to nationals. Like, you know, I've been at nationals since I was 14, 15 years old. So to me, it's kind of like they just want to go nationals. That's their big dream. But then when they go there, they might want to go. This other person wants to just make one team, any team, Europeans, any team, anything. Come on, I want to make a team. They want to make a team. They've got their best. They're happy. That's their thing. They're like, I'm an international athlete for the rest of their lives. Then you got other people that want to go, I want to be an Olympian. They go to the Olympics and make it. And then you got the next people up that are going, I need to make a medal. There's always levels to achievements of what people want to do. So I never judge anyone. Like, that's why I think it's really important not to judge people for what they want to achieve. And it's the same with why I reinvent myself all the time. Even now with training and coaching, it's like, what do I want to achieve? That's why I'm doing it. It's like, where's my parameter of what I want to achieve? I would love to coach an Olympian. I would love to coach someone to their Olympic Games. I'd also love to still improve like my best, like physically, to stay in shape. I want to set myself a goal, like, okay, I'm gonna improve my bench PB, because it's been there for how long. Just something that allows you to target, because that's just growth. That's just development as a human being, just moving forward. I don't like to stand still and be still. I like to set something new and then go for that, because it gives you a purpose, gives you something to go towards. Otherwise you're just lost in the dark sometimes. That's why a lot of time people aren't happy, because they're not going for what they want. They don't know what they want, first of all, and then once they do, they don't go for it, because it's hard. It's not going to be easy. And that's the best way you can do to improve yourself, is go for something that even you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can do this. That's the thing you got to go for.
No, of course, and you know, you talk about a real, you know, important word there, and that's parameters. And sometimes, you know, having parameters and, you know, working within them, and then achieving your objectives, and then, you know, growing beyond them, and then, you know, going out to achieve more than you could have, and, you know, coming out of the dark, you know, there's so much in that within itself. Because, you know, I coach at a football club, and I coach the under-19s, and I work with the senior coaches, and they're like, oh right, so and so hasn't come up from the 16s this year, they should be part of the seniors. And I'm like, well, no, let's hold on. You know, their parameter is that they enjoyed in the 16s being with their mates, and now suddenly they're into this adult environment, and it might not be for them. So for them, they might want to go back and play young football and still be in that mindset, because that's what they want to enjoy. And sometimes you're taking away that enjoyment, and you've got to remember they're still 16 and they're playing with like 35-year-olds, and some of these 35-year-olds on a typical football team on a Saturday, Sunday just love a lash up, and that's why they're playing grassroots football. Now for these kids, they want to get into, you know, academy and play, you know, with high quality players, and sometimes, you know, coming out with, you know, the piss heads is not what they want to do on a Saturday.
No, exactly. They don't always want to be in the same environment, like you said. Some people want to do club athletics, like exactly that. Some people do club athletics and love it and love going and competing week after week for their club everywhere, like left, right, and centre. Some people will be like, "There's no way." I've had people say that to me about doing masters, when they're like, "Oh, would you do?" They're doing some people are doing masters, and I wish you do masters. I'm like, I don't know if I'm even allowed to do masters, because I'm not even allowed to train right now. Everyone's like, why are you training? And I'm like, but when you, it's like everyone else has a parameter for you, and they say, well, we think that you should be doing this, and if you're not doing this, then don't do anything at all. And it's like, that's not true. People do sport, like you said, they're playing football for whatever reason. I played football. My first sport was football. At 10 years old, I was on an all-boy football team that not many people know about, and my dad really wanted me to play and have trials for England, and I was playing really young. I was really young, but I was, you know, I was good. I was on a boys football team playing centre forward. But for me as well, being in that environment is completely different than track, and then that fell off to the side because of run up and down the pitch all the time. I'm a sprinter, so that wasn't great for my was not great at the time. And also just the environment of playing football and stuff. As I'm older, yeah, I cope with that environment way better. But as a young person, still growing, developing, I was way more like, I guess, reserved in myself and things like that. That's not the environment that's going to suit me to be able to perform at my best. And they're doing the same thing. They're playing football for their own reason, and you can't want it more than they do or want it differently than what they want it. It has to be coming from them always.
No, of course, and you know that parameter is, you know, when you were playing football, your dad could have said, right, it's football and football only, whereas your parameter ended up extending into, you know, athletics and, you know, what you're even doing now, and, you know, going into bobsleigh, you know, even at a later age, you've extended your parameter in the importance of understanding and coming from within yourself, and now you know, it's incredible that you have played football, and, you know, you've been able to, you know, learn a lot along the way, and you know, here's a little question, and it might make or break this interview. But what team do you support then on the back of that question?
I know, right. I'm an Arsenal fan.
See,
I'm a Gunner.
I will allow that because, you know, I've always had a soft spot for Arsenal deep down. I'm a Chelsea fan, and some people don't even understand why I like Arsenal. And I'm like, well, they had a good team, they got a good infrastructure, they played some great football, they got legend players. I said, you can't even write them off. Like, I was in the Nike shop a few months ago, or Adidas, one of them, and they had the white Arsenal strip with the red, you know, swirls all over it, and I was so close to buying it because it was such a nice shirt.
It's a nice shirt. We do have the best shirts. I had my shirt on like 2 nights ago, actually, the track, and everyone was going, oh, nice shirt, nice shirt. Obviously, only could be doing well now. And I expect some of them are like, how come you support Arsenal? I mean, in my family, my dad's a Liverpool supporter, my brother's a Man United supporter. So between us, we've got the top 3, like, generally. And then you've got you with Chelsea. And, you know, I've honestly supported them since I was 10. Like, this is the 90s. So I literally, and the team that I supported when I was younger, obviously it's a very different team now. Like, I'm like the Ian Wright, the Van Perties. It's the Invincibles for me. I grew up with Arsene. Like, I didn't even know that Arsene was Arsene Wenger. Like, he wasn't named after the club, because when you're little, I'm just like, well, that's why his name's that. I just didn't know that, because I was just a huge football freak and like loved it. I have my JVC top even now still, like from honestly the 90s kind of thing. So but yeah, we've got a little bit of banter in our family household, because when Liverpool don't do so, I just send my dad a message and be like, have you had a good day?
And it's keep that banter, and certainly keep that shirt, because that shirt's got high value. And suddenly you put a record holder in that shirt, you know, you'll be £1 million plus walking round.
Oh, I didn't think about that, actually. Yeah, and my Dreamcast one. It's true. These shirts, I gotta get them out, because they are like literally what, 20? What's that? 25, quarter of a century. These shirts are now. There
you are. Look, there's a marketing employee on Instagram for you. You'll be repping Arsenal before you know it, all over their socials.
I love that. I love that. I don't know why. How come you support Chelsea then?
Well, it was 2008 final, United versus Chelsea. My dad was a United fan, and I sat there watching it. And he's a bit more of a rugby fan than anything, you know, United was his football team, and I just never really bought into them. And Chelsea played that final, and I just sort of went, you know what, I'm a Chelsea fan now. But I was young, you know, and. So what was that, 14 years ago, so about 10 something like that, and I was like, do you know what, I support Chelsea, and then I've supported them ever since.
That's so mad, that story, because one of my best friends, she's a massive Arsenal fan. Like, obviously that's why we're best friends, but he's got 3 boys, twin boys that are like 7, and then that older boy that's 9, and literally the only one is the older one who's Arsenal. One of them supports West Ham. We don't even know how he developed, and the other one's Tottenham. And honestly, it's a madness, because even to buy their shirt, she was like, I'm not putting that on your skin. And one of the younger twins has just gone to his first match literally last weekend to see what actually was it Tottenham. The Tottenham playing is her sister's husband was just like, I'm going to take him to his first match. And it's funny, because even if whoever, like you said, your dad supported a different team, it actually doesn't matter, because we all support whoever we want to support, which is the same as that in sport. You all just want to do what you want to do, and that's what people do. They just do what they want to do at the end of the day.
No, of course, you know, that's true. And, you know, my dad grew up as a rugby player, and he's a big rugby fan. But, you know, if he was to take me to a rugby match, I'd be literally watching the clock, because nothing is worse than watching rugby.
I'm surprised you say that. Rugby's like massive, like huge. But yeah, I'm not a huge. I'm a rugby supporter of the sport, because the girls are doing great now, and I've got a lot of rugby friends, and like I'm in that space now, just around them. So I appreciate what they do. But I honestly have no idea. I have honestly no idea. I don't. They literally, when they asked me, actually, was it yesterday? about joining. They were like, have you ever tried things like joining rugby? I was like, well, I don't think I'll be good at sevens. I don't think I could do rugby because I could just be a winger. I just come in the ball and I run. That's it. That's all I know.
No, definitely stay away from rugby because one big tackle, you know, snaps a leg or something, and that's game over in some places. Remember what you were good at.
Yeah, thanks for that. I'm actually going to take that advice. That's what I said. I don't want to get hit, so I don't want to break any bones. No thanks.
No, but it's been truly, truly amazing speaking to you. It's been really, really enjoyable. I know that you've had a busy day. You've got a hectic life, and you know, to even fit me in at 8 till 9, you know, is a commitment in itself, and I really appreciate that. But you know, it's been a magnificent hour or so speaking to you, and I've enjoyed every second. And I wish you the absolute best of luck in everything you do, and everything that you've achieved so far is a true testament to you as a, you know, as a person, and you know, everything that you've done, and it's been incredible. And you know, I feel very proud to even speak to you, but you should be even more prouder, and I'm really grateful.
Thank you so much, Luke. No, I appreciate it. Thanks for reaching out, and I was happy to like get involved and stuff. So take care of you. Have a lovely evening, whatever you're doing as well, and this weekend because I hear it's gonna be hot. Where I don't know where you are, but I presume it's still gonna be hot where you are.
It'll be hot everywhere in the UK, but I'm in South Wales.
Okay, cool. So have a good one. Thank you.
And you, Norris. Thank you very much.
In touch, bye.
Bye.